All right, well, good morning, everybody. My presentation is going to be easy. I'm not going to go through a lot of numbers. I'm not going to show a lot of scientific studies. I'm just going to show you images to try to inspire you. So I want to try to present information that hopefully provides us a level of enthusiasm about health. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience. What's happened to me. I was a very diseased individual, and I want to share a little bit just about my own experience becoming more healthy. And I'd like to talk about some of the definitions that I think we should be thinking about when it comes to who's healthy and who's not healthy. I think that's a big part of what I try to do with people, to try to get them more aware of what is going on inside their body and outside their body, so they understand these biometrics and biomarkers. So I'll tell you specifically about my own definition of health, and I'm going to do some introduction to how your body looks inside. So I found about this very exciting modality called MRIs and CTs. We use it in healthcare today, but typically, conventionally, we use it to be honest with you, to chase money, how to treat disease, instead of how I try to use it, which is how to optimize people's health. So it's kind of a new way to look at it, and I'm going to share with you so you can look at your own CTs and MRIs, and you'll be better at interpreting them for the purposes of optimizing your health than physicians. It's very interesting. We're not taught this in medical school. We're taught how to detect disease, and we're taught how to treat it, but we're not taught how to optimize somebody. So you'll learn very valuable information from this lecture. And then I'm going to get into some of the specific ones, the ones inside and some markers outside the body, which I think are equally important. I paid attention to my patients that as we got rid of these biomarkers inside, how their bodies changed. So you can track this information. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about biological optimization through the whole experience. It's just brief. I only got a half hour. And you know, the concept of biological optimization is just enormous. So we're just really going to be able to get into briefly. If there's an opportunity to ask any questions, probably won't be, because I really had to move things along to get this. But I will just say this. My passion is to help people biologically optimize. I love it. So if you come up to me, you can ask me any questions you want. You'll find me very receptive. I'm going to be here for the entire conference. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. So I like to interact with my followers. So feel free to try to message me. I can't answer everyone, but I try to do the best I can. All right, so let's get into that. Sure. Okay, so a little bit about my own background. So I'm trained as an emergency medicine physician. I was overweight. I had eczema all over my body, big lesion on my face. When I started working as a doctor, I had a big patch on my face because I had such bad eczema. I had high blood pressure. I had gastroesophageal reflux disease, heartburn. I had Barrett's esophagus, which is metaplastic changes. I had precancerous lesions in my esophagus. I was on 3 prescription drugs to treat it, and they'd have to scope me every 3 months to biopsy those lesions, looking for cancer. And it was a terrible condition. I had atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, restless leg syndrome, so I kicked my legs all night long. I had obstructive sleep apnea, so I snored all night long. My wife hated, you know, the nighttime experience because I would just keep her up all night between kicking my legs and snoring. I had degenerative joint disease, or arthritis. I had terrible knees, terrible shoulders, terrible joints. I had a large prostate. I'd wake up 4 to 5 times a night to pee. So I couldn't sleep. I was exhausted. And today, at the age of 60, I no longer have that going on. I formerly had erectile dysfunction, completely reversed, severe chronic back pain, and all of it went away when I cut out processed foods. And so I was left terrified as a physician, because I thought, if I was this misled into believing that dietary changes in lifestyle did not have that much of an importance, and I'm left baffled by the fact that it really did. I'm terrified at what an average patient has to try to be able to do to overcome the problems with conventional healthcare, because I've been a physician up for about 20 years, 18 years, when I learned about the importance of trying to live a healthy life and eating clean. So I had to leave my profession in emergency medicine to become a researcher. I said, how in the world is this possible? So I ended up joining a research practice in Minneapolis, and we got a grant from the National Science Foundation, and we studied the reversal of chronic disease looking at these biomarkers I'll share with you for 7 years. So I'm going to share the results of that with you so you have some benefit in that. So that's real quick about my background. All right, so let's talk about what is a characteristic, what are the metrics of somebody being healthy? If I ask you, what is a healthy person? What would you come up with? What would you think about to find somebody who's healthy? In most cases, it comes down to what your physician says, what he or she tells you in an encounter, and it's typically cholesterol. And I'd like to ask you just one question. I'm fond of saying it. Anybody in this room ever meet somebody out of 8 billion, I think we have in the world today, that said, I got my cholesterol under control, and it completely changed my life? And so we have these experiences with cholesterol, and it really doesn't impact your health that much. It impacts the health of the system. It's the most profitable target that we have in conventional healthcare, but it really doesn't optimize you. So it's something else that we need to pay attention to, and I'm going to be introducing that to you. So we know who the role models are: the best basketball players, the best soccer players, the best actors, singers, performers across the globe. We know who they are, why they are, but we don't know who the healthiest people are. And I think we need to find out so we can have role models to inspire everybody else, because the best singer is not going to inspire the best basketball player. They might be good entertainers, but it's not going to have that basketball player play better. If we figure out who the healthiest people are and why, we can improve everybody across the board. Every person is part of humanity. So this is a really, really important mission that we can take our species to new levels. All right, so one of the things I'm going to be talking about is a biomarker called visceral fat. This is fat deep inside your abdomen. You probably have a vague understanding. If you follow me, you might have more of an understanding about it. But it's fat deep inside your body, and we found that it is associated with every form of chronic disease we studied, and 5,000 people either got better or went completely away when we eliminated visceral fat. We started eliminating it. So it's a really important biomarker, and one of the reasons why I haven't talked about it is because we're not trained in it in medical school. It's not part of our training, and it's not part of a study. When you get an abdominal MRI or CT, it's never read. It's never read. So it's really important, a change that we have to have is we have to start paying attention to this important visceral fat that causes inflammation throughout the body. And we saw these tremendous improvements in reversing chronic disease in these 5,000 people we studied for the National Science Foundation. All right, so we're going to look at some pictures now. There's a little red dot here, if you can follow me along. This is we do a slice through the abdomen in this direction here. So you kind of think of it as a slice of pizza through the abdomen of somebody. And so on an MRI, fat shows up as white. So this is fat on the outside, subcutaneous fat, we painted yellow here. And the fat, white stuff on the inside is visceral fat. So this is the bad stuff. And subcutaneous fat really has a protective quality to it. You want a little bit of subcutaneous fat. It helps reduce your incidence of cardiovascular disease. But it's a little bit like Goldilocks. You don't want too much, you want just the right. So you want a thin layer of subcutaneous fat, not too much. And there's also, if you see this black line here, there's a division between subcutaneous fat, between superficial and deep subcutaneous fat. So this deep subcutaneous fat, as it turns out, correlates to the really bad fat called visceral fat. So the more visceral fat you have, the more deep subcutaneous fat. So you want just a little bit of subcutaneous, superficial subcutaneous fat. You want the least amount of deep subcutaneous fat, and you want the least amount of visceral fat. So not all fat is the same. It's the big take-home point, and we'll go some more slides here. So for you to understand, if your dental CT or your MRI is good or bad, I want you to understand what examples are good and what examples of bad look like. So here's a friend of mine, the top image here. So dark is muscle. So these are big oblique muscles. This abdominis rectus, six-pack. This is your core. If you ever wondered what your core looks like inside, it's these structures here. So this is Gabe. His visceral fat is this little bit of white streak up here. So Gabe's got an oval-shaped abdomen. He is mostly muscle, very little visceral fat. Now Asif is filled with visceral fat. He is mostly fat. And if you notice, his muscles are small. So as you increase your visceral fat, it causes inflammation and it causes a condition called sarcopenia. So as you age, you lose your muscles, particularly your type 2 muscles, your fast twitch muscles. So visceral fat plays a major contribution in sarcopenia, the loss of your vital tissue. So you want to really limit your visceral fat and be aware of that. All right. Let's look at another example of good and another example of bad. So here's a client, patient who's filled with visceral fat. This top image, lots of white, very little dark. Here's another one, just the opposite. Lots of dark, very little white. Visceral fat is just that little bit right there, believe it or not. This human being has the healthiest dental scan I've ever seen. He was also the healthiest person I ever examined. In real life, he's an Olympic sprinter. So you want to be aware of what a good dental CT scan or MRI scan looks like. Very little visceral fat and lots of good muscle. All right, let's look at, all right, another bad, okay? You see a lot of white in there, very little dark. I put this up here because I want you to know about the impact of scanning yourself and seeing what's inside. There are many people who say, I got very little visceral fat. I'm a thin guy. You cannot tell. You can have a lot of visceral fat inside you don't know. And this guy actually had just a little bit up here, a little bit of fat, subcutaneous fat, so he kept pinching himself. He thought he was really good. But when we scanned him, we showed him good and bad, and we showed him his scan. That guy passed out, hit the floor, because he thought he was healthy, and he wasn't. So an MRI or CT scan will show you your inside. So I like to use the adage, the MRI don't let you lie. It tells you the truth about what your state of health is when it comes to visceral fat. So I never had a patient pass out on me when I showed lab reports. I could show them terrible platelets, like, they got cancer, really low, 3,000, super low. They don't pass out. They don't get terribly worked up. But when I show them a scan, my clients, they drop the F-bomb, lots of colorful language going on. It's a shocking experience. So you really want, and you don't get it from a DEXA scan. DEXA scans give you numbers. Numbers do not titillate the senses like imagery does. So that's why I advocate for these images. All right, so let's look at my own scan. This is my very first one. This very first one I did after 2 years of giving up processed foods. So I reduced my visceral fat quite a bit, but I still have some. And I have pretty decent muscles because I was sprinting that time. I got involved in sprinting very early on. And this is my research partner, Dr. Zhang. He had a lot more visceral fat. So he was thin on the outside. We both have 32-inch waists. So you would anticipate that we would have visceral fat inside. So you can be thin outside, fat inside, which is called tofu. So I really want to challenge you. If you're in the seat and you're thinking I'm thin, man or woman, you don't know what you've got lurking inside. It's invisible obesity unless you get this scan. So it's important to get that scan to see what's really happening. All right, let's take a look at some images on the impact. Now, the scan should be in every single medical school, should be in every single physician's room when they talk to a patient. So this is a series of scans, and I love the MRI because it can pick up changes. And this first image up here in the top corner, this patient is 68 years old, filled with visceral fat. See that red streak in there? That's fat in your muscle. That's human marbling. So when you buy a steak, you see that marbling there? It's really bad for a cow, and it's bad for a human being. You don't want to have that marbling in your muscle. It's inflammatory. So what this person did was, in 2 weeks, you guys haven't even been to medical school, you're looking at that image, you say, I see that visceral fat, 2 weeks. What did he do? He cut out processed foods. This guy only cut out processed foods, and he goes from these series all the way down 35 weeks. He's got a dad bod here, and now he's got a dude bod. He's got, like, he looks like he's a college student in his 20s. He did not exercise 1 minute. Not 1 minute. This guy only cut out processed foods. So what does this mean? You cannot exercise yourself out of visceral fat in this inflammatory condition. You have got to get control of your diet. And what you've got to recognize, your body is your most important physical asset. It needs the healthiest food possible. And you want to train and get to that. So this is a great scan for you to be aware. Share it with your kids. Share it with anybody you know so they understand the impact that bad processed foods has on your body. All right, the same guy, we scan through his heart. So right lung, left lung, in between your lungs is your heart. Fat shows up on MRI as well. Big chunk of fat. It's called heart fat, pericardial fat. Very inflammatory. This guy had a lot. But in 13 weeks from cutting out just the processed foods, not exercising 1 minute, look how much he reduced his heart fat. This is what you want to do. You want to see these markers and be aware of it and get rid of it. All right, let's look at the association of fat, in your abdomen, visceral fat, and inflammatory fat in your muscles. It's called myosteatosis, or what I call human marbling. So yes, your legs likely have human marble. And so let's look at good and let's look at bad. All right, good. This guy, very little visceral fat. Look at his muscles. Nice and dark. They're really big. And this is the Olympic sprinter. But this client here, this top image, filled with visceral fat. And look at all the fatty streaks in his muscle. And y'all have never probably even seen this before. But you can look at those legs and you say, God, that doesn't quite look good. You do not want to have inflammatory fat going through your muscles unless you get these scans. You want to know, by the way, they're done all the time, and it's never read either. Artificial intelligence just 2 months ago detected it doubles your risk for a heart attack and stroke. Took artificial intelligence. Where are the doctors? Why aren't we paying attention to this? It's really criminal. I think it's just devastating. But we saw this for years in the National Science Foundation. The least amount of human marbling, they have bigger people. All right, let's look at another scan. These are arteries in the brain. So we start scanning the brain because people say, well, why am I getting smarter? My memory's improving when I get rid of visceral fat. So we started scanning the brain again. And what we found was these are carotid arteries, and you see how hazy it gets right here? Good blood flow right there, and then there's a lesion, decreases blood flow. But look right here, the circle white. There's a big plaque, a big blockage of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And this is a 58-year-old guy who runs a company, and in 9 months, we opened up that artery, the middle cerebral artery, and we opened up this one. Just dietary changes. Now, I show this to doctors and lecture to doctors, and here's what they look like. They can't believe it. I mean, my research partner just can't believe the changes that happened just when lifestyle opened up these arteries. All right, so let's talk about external biomarkers. Those were internal, inside. I want to get into now outside the body. So one of the things you can look at are spider veins. We call them, medical science, telangiectasias. Cool. Women know them, typically on their legs, and they run around vein clinics in America trying to get them stripped, cauterized, chemicals, hypertonic saline solution injections. Yeah, you don't want to have them, but don't destroy the body that nature and God gave you, this beautiful body, with these kind of procedures. Just get those vessels healthier, and they disappear. So we saw on the National Science Foundation spider veins reversed. They're on your eyelids, which is kind of a convenient way to take a look at them. Besides being on your legs or on your ankles, they're also, for males, they're on your foreskin. And you don't pay attention to it, but you're going to have all these purple veins that are on your skin. And that means nature's checking you out. You're not going to be part of the contributors to the gene pool. You get erectile dysfunction and poor health, so You can track these things on your eyelids, on your legs with photography. Another one is faces. Your face is inflamed from visceral fat. And these are my own changes in my face when I was 48 years old. In this image here, I weighed less than I do today. Here's a photograph of me. I'm 59 there, there's a typo. It's 59, this particular image here. But you see the tremendous change in my face as you get rid of this inflammation. Let me address the women who are pre-menopause or approaching menopause. When you hit menopause, you get the ugly button pushed because of visceral fat. It decreases your beautiful feminine face that you have as you accumulate this visceral fat. And I see this time and time again. Just look at your relatives when they hit menopause and watch what happens and changes your face, because that's when visceral fat kicks in for women. So you really want to reduce that visceral fat. You'll go back to that nice lean face. I watch this happen to my wife. I see this happen to my female clients, getting rid of visceral fat. You'll have that same kind of look that I had in my face and the changes over a period of time. And that's why I say, when you biologically optimize, you should be getting better. When you get older, you should be getting better, not more diseased. We're getting more disease because we're not tracking these inflammatory changes that are happening inside our body through lifestyle. So, give you hope, you can actually improve. Here's a client, worked with me, lost this huge abdomen in 3 months, getting rid of his visceral fat strategies, focusing on getting rid of that visceral fat, got rid of his dad bod, and during that time, this is, a little delayed in there, but this is his own abdomen down here, how much visceral fat he had in 3 months. Look how much visceral fat he reduced. And a big chunk of fat around his heart, how much that reduced in that short period of time. So, next slide here. All right, so these are outside my body now changes. So this is an image my wife says, never show anybody this image, and it's exactly the image I started with. It's a horrific image. I don't even know why I took that photograph, but I did. It was about 8 years ago. And a few things. Look at my stomach sticking out. I couldn't control that thing. When I was younger, I could suck it in. When you get older, you can't suck it in because your muscle performance, it would hang down like a cow's udder if I bent over. So you can see my spine is crooked. You see how crooked older people's spines get over a period of time, and young people are nice and straight. But look at the change 3 years later as I went carnivore. And I eliminated my visceral fat even more. My abdomen got flat. I actually started growing hair in my abdomen more. And look at the vascular changes. Shazam! My blood flow improved all over. So it's amazing what happens when you get rid of that visceral fat and you start optimizing. So my muscle tonicity improved. And I don't know even how it happened, but look, the shape of my head changed. It just... Everything it's dramatic how much, when you eliminate that visceral fat, how much it causes improvement. All right, well, this is a CT, because I want many people would have had a CT and really not an MRI. And visceral fat on a CT doesn't show up as white, it shows up as black. So if you ever had a CT, go back and look at it yourself, because radiologists, your doctor will not have read it. So you go and take a look and see how much visceral fat you had in that scan, and you can repeat it to see you want to have a change over a period of time. All right, well, let's look at this particular image. Here's a guy. Did you see that video? That guy's jogging. That guy is filled with visceral fat, and he can barely sprint. This is how we found out people's performance correlates to visceral fat. So he could barely sprint to 63 years old because he's filled with that visceral fat. But here's my MRI scan. I have very low visceral fat, and hopefully this kicks in. See how much better I can sprint? I couldn't sprint like that when I was filled with visceral fat. But when you get rid of visceral fat, the most exciting thing I saw for the National Science Foundation is how much people's performance improved. So why was I so excited about it? Because here's what I think is going to happen. Healthcare seems to have abandoned the importance of tracking, getting people better. I mean, it's a big pot of money. It's a large part of our economy. But here's what I predict is going to happen. I think corporate America is going to step in. Because they're going to find out when you get rid of disease and lifestyle starts improving in people, you get them more healthy, cut healthcare costs, but you're going to get them performing better. And so productivity in America, commerce is going to improve. And so we're going to see self-insured companies, large companies, find out about this, and they're just going to be giving it away to their employees so that they can improve their bottom line. Healthcare is not going to be motivated for traditional healthcare to do that. So let's look at a comparison view. If you do, okay. So here's a side by side. If you do video, you take freeze frame of yourself sprinting, and really you can do this with anything. You can look at how well you do pull-ups and how well you do push-ups. It's not just how many you do, but how well you do it. And you can analyze these photographs and videos to see, am I performing them? And you'll see if you pay attention to it, you will be. So let's look at these angles. This is my last slide. Let's look at these angles. So this is the guy filled with visceral fat. So his angle is not very, he barely get his foot up, barely get his knee up. And this angle here is quite broad. But look how intense this angle is in myself. This knee gets up here and forms this angle. So you can track this over a period of time. Track these things, not cholesterol. I mean, if you want to track cholesterol, you're going to see no real change, significant change in terms of performance. But when you track these much more meaningful biomarkers, when we as researchers took a look and attached these biomarkers to the reversal of chronic disease, we could see this tremendous improvement in people's health and their improvement. So one of the slides I missed over because I think this thing skipped it is my definition of health. So my last minute here, I'm going to explain my definition of health. So my definition of health is, key biological indicators. How much visceral fat you have, how much deep subcutaneous fat you have, how much superficial subcutaneous fat you have. These are key biological indicators, along with key biological performance indicators. How well you do things, how well you perform. So the simple definition, that sounds kind of complicated, and that's for my medical colleagues to try to give them some kind of ability to quantify it. But for you in the audience, let me just explain it. Just what it really means is how well you look and how well you perform. How well you look and how well you perform, really your best, most important metrics for the biological optimization of humans. And that's what we saw time and time again throughout ancestrally. People just looked better and performed better, and we didn't have numbers for most of our existence. So I don't really think it's numbers, it's how you look and how you perform. All right, well that's my presentation. I want to thank the Hard to Kill Summit, Dr. Seaman, for inviting me here. This is my passion. I live for this, to be able to present this kind of information. I just thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity. This is one of the best conferences I've ever been to. I had one of the best meals I ever had last night. And I'm a fanatic when it comes to the kind of food that goes in my body. And I'm just going to put a plug in for that Piedmontese steak that we ate. It had the lowest steatosis, the lowest marble I've ever seen in a steak. And it was fantastic. So right now I'm super interested in that. I'd love to do an MRI on some of these animals. But yeah, I think you want to get the healthiest food in your body, and I was super impressed with what they've been able to do in that particular beef. And I have no financial interest in them. I just was very, very interested. So this is a great conference, and I hope you guys pay attention and you get your lives changed. Even if you don't completely change lives, what you want to do is just keep continuously improve. It's a fantastic opportunity. Biological optimization. As you get older, you literally should be getting better and better. I feel that way. All my medical conditions went completely away. I look better and I perform way better. And I invite you guys to get interested in really optimizing your health, not just get healthy, but really see yourself as, as you age, really become optimally healthy, and you'll improve your quality of life. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity today.